If you listen to much of the media, the Russian threat is all about election tampering. It's not. This week, we examine threats on two fronts. On one, Russia is engaged in a shooting war with Ukraine, and the Trump administration is upping the U.S. involvement in a high-stakes replay of Cold War politics. For the last 4 years, there's been fighting along Ukraine's eastern border with Russia. Today, Russian-backed and equipped separatists control a large area and several cities. To see the real and present danger, we traveled to the trenches of eastern Ukraine to the Russian front. Weaving our way through a freshly bombed-out neighborhood in eastern Ukraine, we are told to move quickly and stay low.
And they have mounted there four fire position, 4 machine gun fire position. It's there. So they observe enemy position.
Enemy positions on that slag pile right there. And after a few minutes, we push forward into the trenches and seemingly backwards in time. These snow-covered sandbags and wood plank walkways are reminiscent of World War II, even World War I. But this is no history tour. It is the front line of a highly active combat zone.
It was very dangerous. They have snipers here.
Because just feet away, he says, are Russian-backed rebels in another trench. We have to be quiet. You can see that there are some soldiers positioned here behind me in this particular trench. We've got little foxholes along the way, gunner positions that we've passed as well. We're going to keep moving up as close to the front line as we can. Even as we interview this father and son duo defending this part of the line, more gunfire breaks out. So we just heard a series of shots fired, not 100 yards away perhaps. We got down a little bit, but they say they're not terribly worried because they've become so used to it. It happens all the time. It was a series of 4 or 5 shots. 5 minutes ago, it was 4 or 5 other shots.
We have a small arm fire almost every day here. But from time to time, they also used BMP, BTR. They used their high caliber weapon.
This is life in the forgotten war. Ever since Russia invaded and annexed the Crimean Peninsula, essentially taking over that portion of eastern Ukraine in 2014, their reach has grown significantly. Separatists and Russian-backed forces now taking large swaths of the highly valuable Donbas region, known for its coal and metal production. Towns are sometimes cut in half, one side still controlled by Ukraine, the other by rebels and their Russian backers. This grandmother is looking after 3 children, yet refuses to leave.
She says that she do not afraid because she used to live in this situation. She is not afraid. We will stay to death.
Over the last 4 years, according to the United Nations, 10,000 people, civilian and military, have been killed in the fighting. More than 4 million have been affected by the conflict. In this tug of war over territory, Ukraine says it's unable to recover areas lost and unwilling to cede any more. Democracy and much more is at stake.
If there was no Ukraine and was no this conflict, they've got such conflict on their borders.
So you are saying in some respects, you're the front line between Russia and the rest of Europe?
We are front line, it is true. If we lose here, you lose Europe, all of it.
Lieutenant Colonel Sergei Sapko is a military hero, awarded Ukraine's highest medal. His exploits have saved lives, but he's also seen many lost. Some people have written that the reason you can't be so offensive, you can't be so aggressive, is because in some respects you're outgunned or outmanned. Is that true?
Yeah, we must understand that the desire of soldiers to fight, it's very good for their morale. But from the other side, we also understand that doesn't matter how many troops and we involved into offensive, Russia will involve even more troops than we do.
Frustrating, he says, at such close range. During our 2 days at the front, the Ukrainian military says 5 of their soldiers were killed, 5 others were wounded.
We have a position at least 50 meters from the enemy.
You can actually hear each other talk sometimes.
When we located very close to them, like I said, we can hear also them. And of course it's difficult for personnel because they always in stressful condition. Also, when we located too close to the enemy, engagements also become more often than other part of the area of operation.
So often, in fact, the number of ceasefire violations, according to the international monitoring group, the OSCE, topped 400,000 last year.
There is no Russian army on the territory of Donbass, but there are certain militia formations that are self-sufficient and ready to repel any large-scale actions against Donbass.
So then what do you think when you hear statements like that from Russia, from Vladimir Putin saying, we're not doing this?
Well, the military response will be bullshit, but talking politically correct, this is part of the war. The information component is number one component in 21st century warfare.
Just as important, having help from the U.S.
Your fight is our fight. All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Promises from Senator Lindsey Graham on a 2016 visit now becoming a reality.
It's too late, but it's coming. For years now, some of us have been saying that this situation requires the United States to step up and do more.
Senator Rob Portman of Ohio is co-founder of the Ukraine Caucus on Capitol Hill.
And specifically to provide the kind of assistance they need, which is the ability to push back against the Russians with their larger and more sophisticated equipment. And so I have promoted this idea of lethal aid, not just aid, but
not just defensive aid.
Not just defensive aid, but the ability to defend themselves. And I don't think that's too much to ask.
To see some of that American assistance, we travel in heavily armored vehicles to another part of the front line. Right now we're driving through what's called the ATO. It's the Anti-Terrorist Operations Zone, and it's a massive area, about 250 miles from north to south, 30 to 40 miles wide. Ukrainian government says that there are about 3.5 or 4 million of its people right now living in this area that's either being fought over or is under partial Russian control. At this makeshift base in an old factory, American hardware. These troops proudly show us Humvees and a radar system used to identify enemy fire. That before long, as we approach another part of the front line, we hear yet again. But until more American help and heavy weapons arrive, Lieutenant Colonel Sopko will keep encouraging his troops to stay positive and hold the line. Are you confident that Ukraine will come out with a victory?
By all my heart, I believe in this end state, yes.
On the subject of the U.S. decision to supply lethal weapons to Ukraine, the Russian deputy foreign minister said, quote, "It leads to war, not to peace."